Did you know what life was like before ODM gear was invented? In the main anime, ODM gear feels completely normal. Scouts swinging through the air like Spider-Man, yanking titans apart like it's routine. But in Before the Fall, which takes place before ODM gear existed, humanity was in a genuinely hopeless situation. The scouts weren't even real soldiers back then. They were essentially a sacrificial unit sent out to die and buy time. Even in the current anime, expeditions return with hundreds of casualties, and that's with ODM gear. Without it, the situation was unimaginably worse. Regular blades accomplish nothing because titans only die when you hit the nape, and with no mobility, no speed, and no way to actually reach that weak spot, there was no strategy. When titans showed up, the only option was to run and pray. Then came Angel Altanen, and just like his name suggests, he really was the angel who changed everything. He combined gas propulsion, grappling anchors, and dual blades into a single combat system, creating the foundation of what would eventually become ODM gear. That one invention transformed humanity from completely helpless prey into titan killers capable of producing legends like Levi. When Bertolt was about to be devoured by Armin's pure titan, he briefly smiled. But why? The reality is that he didn't know the titan in front of him was Armin. So when he saw his former comrades standing there, Armin, Mikasa, Jean, and Connie, he likely believed for just a moment that they had come to save him. He understood that the colossal titan's power couldn't simply be passed to some random person, and seeing familiar faces gave him a desperate flicker of hope that they wouldn't let him die like this. Despite everything, despite being their enemy, he had once fought alongside them. Part of him clung to the idea that their shared history meant something, that they couldn't stand there and watch him get eaten in cold blood. But the moment he looked at their expressions, the truth hit him instantly. There was no hesitation, no grief, no conflict in their eyes. They had no intention of saving him whatsoever. His smile disappeared and he screamed for help, finally understanding that he was completely and utterly alone in that moment. What makes it genuinely poetic is the cruel irony. The titan consuming him was the one person in that entire group who, in any other circumstance, would have been the most likely to try to save his life. What if Mike had survived an attack on Titan? In Season 2, Mike encounters the Beast Titan and suffers one of the most horrific deaths in the entire show. As the second strongest soldier after Levi, with no Titan shifting powers or Ackerman genes, he represented the absolute peak of what an ordinary Eldian could achieve. Fans have always wondered what his survival would have meant for the story. The answer is quite a lot. Mike's extraordinary sense of smell alone could have given the scouts far too much of an advantage. He might have been able to detect Reiner and Bertolt hiding within the walls, or sense Zeke's presence long before anyone else even suspected something was wrong. That single ability could have fundamentally altered the entire Shiganshina arc. And later in Season 4, when the scouts unknowingly drank wine laced with Zeke's spinal fluid, Mike would almost certainly have smelled something off immediately, potentially unraveling Zeke's entire plan before it could even begin. The ripple effects on the story would have been enormous, which is likely exactly why Izayama killed him off when he did. He reportedly considered the same thing with Levi, recognizing he was simply too strong, but chose to nerf him severely instead of removing him entirely. When Annie crystallized herself at the end of Season 1, she was around 16 years old, but when she finally emerged in Season 4, everyone around her had aged to around 19 or older. So what about Annie? Did she age too? Or was she still physically 16 when she came out? A fan on Reddit raised this exact question, and the comment section was genuinely hilarious. Everyone was immediately typing some version of, "We know it's you, Armin." But setting that aside, the actual answer is interesting. Annie's crystal essentially put her into suspended animation. Her body remained technically alive, but everything else was paused. No eating, no growing, and almost certainly no normal physical aging. The biological processes that drive development simply weren't running. At the same time, she wasn't completely unconscious either, which makes the situation even stranger. She later confirmed she could hear Armin and Hitch talking to her throughout the entire time she was sealed away, which means her mind was present and active even while her body wasn't progressing. So the most reasonable conclusion is that mentally she experienced those years and effectively aged to around 19 in terms of awareness and emotional development. But physically, her body likely remained close to where it was when she went in at 16. Why was Annie crying in that scene? In Season 1, when the scouts go on a mission and suddenly encounter the female Titan, she kidnaps Eren and tries to escape until Levi arrives and completely dismantles her. Honestly, I'd be crying too if I got obliterated by a 5'6" Beyblade. But the real reason she was crying goes much deeper than the physical beating. Annie never wanted to be a killer. She just wanted to complete her mission and go home. She was raised by her father, who trained her with brutal intensity from the time she was a child. But his final words before she left for Paradise shifted the weight of everything she was doing. He simply asked her to promise she would come back to him. That was the only thing she ever truly wanted, to return to him. But by that point in the story, Annie was completely cornered. She had failed to capture Eren, which meant her mission was a failure she couldn't undo. And in the process of trying, she had killed countless soldiers who had done nothing except stand in her way. She was trapped between her orders, the crushing guilt of everything she had done, and her desperate need to survive long enough to see her father again. That collision of failure, grief, and suffocating hopelessness is exactly why she cried. How exactly did Flock survive the Beast Titan attack? After Erwin's legendary speech, the scouts launched their desperate charge directly toward the Beast Titan. Zeke was crushing boulders into smaller fragments and hurling them at the incoming soldiers at devastating speed, making evasion nearly impossible. 99% of the scouts died in that charge. Somehow, Flock walked away. The most honest answer is plot armor. But let's try to find some logic anyway. If you pause at the exact moment Marlowe gets hit, you can spot Flock ducking low and using the side of his horse as a shield against the incoming rocks. It's not a guaranteed survival method, but with the right timing and enough luck, it could work. After that, the reasonable assumption is that he fell from his horse and stayed down, keeping a low enough profile to avoid taking further damage. His second impossible survival is harder to justify. After being shot and falling from a considerable height, he somehow clung to the ship all the way to port without losing his grip or his life. There's no clean explanation for that one. Realistically, Isayama simply needed Flock alive long enough to delay the flight and give Hanji the send-off she deserved. Sometimes that's just the answer. Was Erwin's final charge really the only way to beat the Beast Titan? In Season 3, with the scouts completely pinned down and Zeke tearing through them with hurled boulders, Erwin arrives at one of the most brutal decisions in anime history, a full death charge. Every remaining soldier rides straight into certain death, purely to distract Zeke long enough for Levi to close the gap. Was there genuinely no other option? Looking at the situation honestly, probably not. The Beast Titan was bombarding them almost continuously, with barely any downtime between throws. Their only cover was a handful of houses already being shredded, with the wall cutting off any retreat behind them. They were completely boxed in. The most critical shortage was firepower. No thunder spears, no cannons, nothing capable of reaching Zeke from a safe distance. Flanking was equally impossible. Pure Titans guarded both of Zeke's sides, and any movement in that direction meant instant elimination. Every exit was sealed. Every alternative led to the same outcome. Exactly as Erwin put it, they could stand still and die without meaning, or charge forward and die with purpose. Sometimes those really are the only two options left on the table. What do you think? Could you have found another way out? Did you know Titan shifters actually feel pain? In the show, when shifters get injured in their Titan forms, they barely react, which suggests they don't physically experience the damage their Titans sustain. Remember when Levi sliced Zeke's eyes, and Zeke's reaction was essentially just confusion about why everything had gone dark. No screaming, no agony, just sudden blindness. That confirms Titan shifters don't feel pain the same way their Titans do while inhabiting them. But here's where it gets complicated. In human form, they absolutely feel pain, as demonstrated clearly when Eren cut off his own leg to infiltrate Marley and was visibly suffering through it. So they can feel pain, just apparently not while operating inside a Titan body. The inconsistency gets even more puzzling when you look at Peak and Porco falling into that hole during the Marley infiltration and breaking bones without appearing to be in any pain whatsoever. One possible explanation is the role of active regeneration. Eren had deliberately stopped his healing, while Porco and Peak were actively regenerating at the moment of injury, which might suppress the pain response entirely. Whether that means shifters are truly immune to pain in Titan form, or simply experience it differently is still an open question. Why did Eren get eye marks and lightning when shouting at Hanji? In the scene where Eren is in jail after raiding Marley, he yells at Hanji in frustration, and viewers notice lightning crackling around him along with the characteristic Titan transformation marks appearing under his eyes. This wasn't random. It happened because Eren was on the verge of actually transforming. The marks appear because the muscles connecting the eyes to the Titan form become activated during the transformation process, and even though Eren didn't fully shift, his intense emotional state triggered a partial activation of his Titan power. The lightning is a direct extension of this, since it typically signals the beginning of a transformation being initiated. Eren wasn't just angry in that moment. He was screaming at Hanji out of genuine desperation. He had already seen the future through his inherited memories and was horrified by what was coming. He was begging her to tell him whether there was any way at all to prevent the outcome he had foreseen, any alternative path he hadn't considered. Seeing Eren on the verge of transforming inside a confined space, Hanji stepped back and immediately diffused the tension the only way available, by calling Eren a pervert, completely derailing the emotional intensity of the moment. Why can't Ackermans become Titan shifters? If an Eldian is injected with Titan spinal fluid, They transform into a pure Titan instantly, and consuming a shifter can grant one of the 9 Titans. But one bloodline is completely immune to all of this, the Ackermans. Levi, Mikasa, and Kenny, the last known members of the clan, cannot transform under any circumstances. The reason traces back to ancient Titan experiments. Long ago, Eldian scientists attempted to create human weapons by fusing Titan powers directly into living people. The experiment succeeded beyond expectations. The subjects gained superhuman strength, speed, and heightened senses, but permanently lost the ability to transform into Titans. They became walking Titan hybrids, human in form, carrying Titan-level power without the drawbacks. That biological change is also why their blood completely rejects Titan spinal fluid. Their physiology simply cannot process it anymore. Additionally, Ackermans are immune to the founding Titan's memory manipulation, meaning the king could never erase or control their thoughts. That immunity made them a direct threat to royal control, which is precisely why they were systematically hunted and nearly wiped out. Here are some details you probably missed in Attack on Titan. First, in Season 4, during Eren's fight with the Warhammer Titan, he gets cornered and she asks for his last words. Most people hear his reply, "Do it now, Mikasa," and move on, reading it as nothing more than a signal for a surprise attack. But rewatch that moment after finishing the finale, where Eren dies at Mikasa's hands, and everything shifts. In a very real sense, "Do it now, Mikasa," becomes his actual last words, echoing quietly across the entire timeline. It's one of the more subtle hints at the Attack Titan's ability to send and receive memories through time, planted long before the concept is ever properly explained. Second, in Season 2, after the Utgard Castle battle, watch closely as the scouts climb back up the wall. Rainer and Bertolt are visibly glowing and steaming in the background, something most viewers completely overlooked. Here's the part worth pausing for, though. At the exact moment their transformations begin, you can catch a brief sketch of their Titan forms flickering across their faces for just a split second before the change fully takes over. It's gone almost immediately, but it's absolutely there if you know where to look. If the Ackermans were hunted down, how did Levi and Mikasa survive and openly join the scouts? We know the royal government feared the Ackerman clan because they were immune to memory manipulation, meaning the king couldn't control them. That's exactly why they were persecuted and nearly wiped out entirely. But why didn't the government go after Mikasa, Levi, or Kenny? The answer is actually straightforward. The Ackerman persecution happened generations before the main story takes place. By the time Levi and Mikasa were born, the clan was already essentially extinct and no longer posed any organized threat to the crown. Mikasa's family lived completely isolated in the mountains, off the grid and out of sight. Levi grew up underground in the interior, where royal authority barely reached, and most people had no idea what was even happening above them. And Kenny? He was so individually dangerous that instead of attempting to eliminate him, the royal family simply recruited him, turning the threat into an asset. By the time the story begins, the government isn't actively hunting Ackermans anymore. What was once considered a national security threat had quietly faded into a forgotten bloodline that barely existed in anyone's awareness. What do you think? Does that explanation hold? Did you know Izayama actually revealed what would have happened if Erwin became the Colossal Titan? According to Izayama, if Erwin had survived and inherited the Colossal Titan, he actually would have given up shortly after receiving it. His entire life was driven by a single consuming goal, to uncover the truth about the world and prove his father's theory right. That was his motivation from the very beginning. Erwin's father believed that the memories of humanity inside the walls had been deliberately erased, and that people and lands existed beyond those walls. It was considered a dangerous idea at the time, and he was eventually killed for holding it. Erwin carried that belief throughout his entire life, determined to finish what his father had started and vindicate him. Once the basement was finally opened and the truth was revealed to the world, Erwin's purpose would have been completely fulfilled, and with it, his reason to keep fighting. Even Levi asked him directly what he wanted to do after achieving that goal. Erwin admitted honestly that he didn't know. That answer says everything. Without that singular purpose pulling him forward, Erwin had nothing left to live for, which means inheriting the Colossal Titan would have given him power without direction. Why didn't anything happen when Historia touched Eren in the Crystal Cave? When Historia touches Eren's arm in the Crystal Cave, nothing happens. But later when Eren kisses her hand, he suddenly receives visions of the future. Here's a quick breakdown of why. The Attack Titan's power isn't simply about seeing the future. It's specifically the ability to send memories backward to previous holders of the Titan. When future Eren witnessed the rumbling, he sent those memories back to Grisha, who then passed them forward to present-day Eren. So why did the vision trigger during the hand kiss and not earlier in the cave? It isn't purely about physical contact. Touching someone with royal blood creates access to the paths, essentially the Titan equivalent of a shared network. But even with that connection established, you only receive what future Eren deliberately chooses to send, and only at the moment he wants you to receive it. In the Crystal Cave, Eren was in complete emotional turmoil, essentially begging Historia to eat him and inherit his Titan. He probably could have accessed something through her touch, but he simply wasn't mentally in a place where that connection could open properly. The timing of the vision wasn't accidental. Future Eren controlled it entirely. Why is it so enormous compared to every other Titan? Because Eren was able to access the full power of Ymir directly, something previous founding Titan inheritors could never do due to the vow to renounce war imposed through royal blood. That restriction is gone for Eren, which is why his form operates on an entirely different scale. Why does it have no skin? At that size, keeping muscles intact during prolonged Titan form causes them to burn out rapidly. A skeletal structure requires minimal muscular exertion to move, similar to how a centipede connects movement through its spine rather than individual legs. The colossal Titans avoid this problem by drawing energy from sunlight and from Eren's own healing power. As for the grotesque design itself, it traces directly back to the moment Eren was decapitated, his head severed completely from his body. When his detached head made contact with Zeke's, the founding Titan's power activated, but his body was no longer whole. The Paths then reconstructed his Titan form based on that fragmented physical state, producing the massive suspended skeletal frame we see. Beyond the mechanical explanation, the design carries symbolic weight too. The stripped-down bones reflect Eren's complete detachment from humanity and his singular, consuming purpose, executing the rumbling. Why did Ymir have those strange veiny marks after transforming? When Titan shifters emerge from their Titans, they typically display burn-like marks around the eyes or cheeks caused by the heat and the flesh that connects them to the Titan body during transformation. But Ymir looked different. Alongside the usual marks, she had unusual vein-like patterns spreading around her neck, which made fans wonder whether they signified something special about her specific Titan or her unique origins. The real answer is much simpler than that. This was early in the story, and Isayama hadn't yet finalized how Titan transformation marks should consistently look. He was still experimenting with different visual approaches across different characters. The same thing happened with Eren back in Season 1, after his fight with Annie. He emerged with strange, scale-like patterns across his face, rather than the clean eye marks that became the established standard in later seasons. As the series progressed, Isayama simplified and unified the design, making transformation marks look consistent, regardless of which shifter was emerging from their Titan. Ymir's veiny patterns were essentially an early experiment that never got revisited or explained. What do you think about it? Attack on Titan is hands down one of the best anime ever made, but even if you're not a devoted fan, you have to acknowledge that the character designs are drawn with an unusually realistic touch. Most anime leans heavily into exaggeration. Enormous eyes, tiny noses, perfect symmetry. It looks distinctive, but it's nowhere close to how real people actually appear. Compare that to this series, and the difference is immediately obvious. Isayama didn't simply adopt the standard anime style. He gave every character unique, real-world features that you'd actually see on a human face. Take Annie's nose as an example. It has a slight curve to it, what's commonly called a Greek nose, which plenty of real people have. Instead of giving her some perfectly straight, generic anime nose, he made her look genuinely believable, and honestly, that's a big part of why she's so striking. The same applies to Hanji and Erwin. Their faces carry strong European features with none of that neat triangular nose shorthand that dominates most character designs. It's that attention to imperfect, specific detail that makes the series feel so grounded, and it's a large part of why these characters stay with you long after the show ends. How did Bertolt's Titan marks disappear so quickly? In Season 1, when the colossal Titan reappears, Eren tries to attack it, but it vanishes almost immediately after blowing a hole in the wall. Just minutes later, Bertolt is standing among the others looking completely clean. No marks, no injuries, no sign that anything unusual just happened. He looks like an entirely normal person. There's really only one honest explanation for this. It's probably a plot hole. There is no realistic way those burn marks could have faded that fast. The physical aftermath of transforming into the colossal Titan is usually severe. The sheer heat involved causes intense scarring, and the flesh around the face often looks partially melted from the transformation alone. Even smaller Titan forms leave visible marks that take time to fade. Since this was extremely early in the story, it's likely that Isayama simply hadn't yet worked out the finer details of how Titan transformation marks behave and how long they last. He refined those rules significantly as the series progressed, but this early scene got left behind in the process. Either way, we found a plot hole. Let me know in the comments if you've spotted any others throughout the series. Why were Reiner and Bertolt surprised to see Zeke? In Season 2, when the scouts are at Utgard Castle, they spot the Beast Titan walking toward the wall. Everyone is shocked. Nobody has ever seen a Titan like that before. But look closely at Reiner and Bertolt, and you'll notice they look genuinely shocked too. Most fans assume they were just acting to blend in with the others, but their reaction was real, just for entirely different reasons. The scouts were shocked because they were witnessing a new and unfamiliar type of Titan. Reiner and Bertolt were shocked because they knew exactly who was inside that Titan. Titan. Zeke showing up meant Marley had dispatched a higher-ranking warrior to Paradise, and that was seriously bad news for both of them. They had been living undercover for 5 years and still had almost nothing to show for it. Marcel was dead. They had completely failed to locate the founding Titan, and their mission had essentially been stalling without progress for half a decade. Zeke's arrival wasn't a welcome sight. It was a signal that Marley had lost patience and sent someone to check on them. When they recognized who it was, they understood immediately that they were in serious trouble and running out of time to deliver results. Why did Amir save Zeke? Remember that scene where Levi strapped thunder spears to Zeke and rigged them to trigger on any movement? Zeke, completely desperate, pulled the pin himself and blew his own body to pieces. At that point, he was essentially dead. But then, something unexpected happened. A nearby pure Titan stuffed him into its belly, keeping what remained of him alive. And we later see Amir in the paths, rebuilding his shattered body from scratch. So why did she save him? The answer comes down to 2 key points. First, Zeke carries royal blood, which makes him critically important within the entire Titan power structure. Ymir is bound by an ancient compulsion to serve the royal bloodline, and that instinct drove her to preserve him automatically, because losing Zeke would have severed a vital link in the chain connecting to the founding Titan's power. Second, the pure Titan that physically rescued him wasn't random. It had been created using Zeke's own spinal fluid, which made it instinctively and unconditionally loyal to him, functioning essentially as a mindless bodyguard that acted on pure biological programming, rather than any conscious decision. Both factors working together is what kept Zeke alive long enough for Ymir to do the rest. Who has the stronger military, Paradise or Marley? I don't even know how this is a real question, but let's answer it anyway. Starting with Paradise, these people were essentially living in the Stone Age. Their primary weapons were ODM gear, basic rifles, and cannons. All of it designed specifically to fight Titans, not human armies. They only began making meaningful technological progress after capturing Marleyan soldiers and reverse engineering their equipment. Marley, by contrast, was operating on an entirely different level. They had airships, tanks, heavy artillery, a full navy, and controlled more than half of all Titan shifters. When Marley launched their assault on Paradise in Season 4, the results spoke for itself. The Paradise forces stood no real chance. Even with the fragments of Marleyan technology they had managed to copy, they were still drastically outmatched in almost every measurable category. The one genuine advantage Paradise had was something that can't be quantified: sheer, almost irrational bravery. These soldiers would throw themselves into battle armed with nothing more than blades, gas canisters, and the stubborn refusal to give up, and somehow, against all logic, it kept working for them. How did Eren transform even after having his limbs eaten by the Jaw Titan? A lot of fans find this confusing because we have seen Titan shifters become unable to transform after losing their limbs. Back in Season 2, when Reiner and Bertolt captured Eren and Ymir, they cut off their arms and legs specifically to prevent them from transforming. So how did Eren pull it off in Season 4? The detail most people miss is the timing of the injuries, not the injuries themselves. Losing limbs alone does not stop a shifter from transforming. What actually prevents transformation is losing limbs shortly after an already exhausted transformation. When a shifter transforms, their body expends enormous energy and shifts its focus entirely toward healing and recovery rather than transforming again. That is precisely what happened in Season 2. Ymir had already transformed earlier, and Eren had just finished fighting Reiner. Their bodies were already in recovery mode when their limbs were cut, leaving them with nothing left to trigger another transformation. In Season 4, the situation was completely different. When the Jaw Titan bit off Eren's legs, he had not yet transformed at all. His body still carried a full reserve of energy, which meant he could transform immediately despite the missing limbs. Timing was everything. What do you think? What if Gabby hadn't shot Eren's head off right before he touched Zeke? If that shot never happened, the entire final act of Attack on Titan would have changed drastically. Instead of triggering the long skeletal founding Titan form, his transformation would have likely resembled a much larger and heavily armored version of the Attack Titan combined with founding Titan features. With his full body intact, Eren would have been significantly faster and more mobile, capable of actively fighting the Alliance rather than serving as a massive stationary platform for them to land on. Armin's plan to destroy him with an explosion would also have failed entirely. A complete Titan body could simply harden to absorb the blast without damage. A fully mobile founding Titan would have been nearly impossible to stop under any conventional strategy. The only remaining option for the Alliance would have been somehow breaching the nape and physically pulling Eren out, but with him actively defending himself, that outcome would have been close to impossible. Even so, Eren still wouldn't have won in any meaningful sense because winning was never truly his goal. His real intention was always to protect his friends, not to come out victorious. And that changes everything about how we read the ending. Why didn't Eren use the Warhammer Titan's full power? After obtaining the Warhammer Titan, many viewers expected Eren to rely far more on its unique abilities during combat. Although he occasionally used its hardening to escape confinement and clash with Reiner, he never pushed the Titan to the extreme by creating elaborate weapons, giant constructs, or the complex battlefield tools previously displayed by its former holder. One explanation is the enormous stamina cost tied to the Warhammer's techniques. Forming massive structures and weapons drains energy quickly, which would not suit Eren's direct and relentless fighting style. Instead of conserving strength for drawn-out battles or carefully controlling the field, he preferred overwhelming opponents with speed, pressure, and the brute force of the attack titan. His mentality also changed after speaking with Zeke about the rumbling. Once his attention centered entirely on carrying out that plan, versatility no longer mattered to him. From Eren's perspective, the Warhammer's advanced abilities were unnecessary since total destruction had already become his primary objective. To him, efficiency mattered far more than creativity now. Why was Grisha's Titan so much bulkier than the others? If you look closely, his attack Titan is noticeably heavier and more solid compared to Eren's or Kruger's transformations. Some people dismiss it as art style inconsistency, but there's a legitimate in-universe explanation. The first reason is age. Grisha was already a fully grown adult when he inherited the attack Titan. Titan forms tend to reflect the user's physical build and mental state, so his naturally carried the proportions of a middle-aged man, broader, heavier, and less defined. Essentially, a Titan with a dad bod, which is exactly what you'd expect from someone who spent his adult years as a doctor, rather than a soldier. Eren and Kruger both inherited the Titan while young and physically active. Their bodies were leaner and more athletic, and their Titan forms reflected that, slimmer, sharper, and more angular. The second reason is Eren's own progression. Compare his early Titan to his Season 4 transformations, and the difference is significant. By then, his form had become far more muscular and defined, matching the older, hardened version of himself he had grown into. It's a consistent pattern throughout the series. The shifter's body and state of mind shaped the Titan over time. Did you know Levi could have technically saved both Erwin and Armin? At the end of Season 3, both of them were on the verge of death and Levi had one Titan serum to use. He chose Armin, injected him, and fed Bertolt to him, turning Armin into the colossal Titan. It felt like an impossible choice with no alternative, but there was actually a way to save both. Earlier in Season 3, when Rod Reiss transformed, he didn't inject a full dose. He licked a small amount off the ground and still triggered the transformation. That moment quietly proved that a complete dose isn't necessary. Even a fraction is enough to turn someone into a Titan. In theory, Levi could have split the serum between Armin and Erwin, giving each of them half. One of them would then consume Bertolt and inherit the colossal Titan. The other would simply be a regular Titan, kept in custody until another shifter could be located and fed to them. Both survive. Both eventually regain their human forms. The plan had no obvious flaw, except for one thing. Levi didn't know any of this. He had no reason to believe a partial dose would work, and splitting the only serum available on an untested assumption wasn't a risk he could justify in that moment. The option existed. He just didn't have the information to see it. These are the biggest aura losses in Attack on Titan. First up is the Warhammer Titan versus Eren in Season 4. She had him completely pinned and helpless and made the mistake of announcing it out loud. One thing watching anime teaches you is to never declare victory unless you are absolutely certain, because a second later Mikasa came in like a lightning bolt with thunder spears, sliced her apart, and handed Eren the upper hand entirely. But that was nothing compared to what happened to Zeke in Season 3. Zeke was untouchable. He had just dismantled the scouts from a distance with his rock barrage and was completely in his element. Then he looked around and every single Titan was gone. Reiner had even warned him beforehand, Levi is dangerous. Zeke apparently did not take that seriously enough. Because Levi did not give him a single moment to react. He tore through the beast Titan so quickly and so efficiently that Zeke did not even register. He was being dismantled until he found himself ripped out of the nape, completely helpless. Why didn't Porco inherit the Warhammer Titan when he had the user right in his mouth? When Eren figured out that the Jaw Titan's claws and teeth could shatter the crystal shell protecting the Warhammer user, he used Porco like a lemon squeezer, crushing the crystal and letting the blood pour directly into his mouth. That is how Eren inherited the power. But Porco literally had the Warhammer user between his jaws. So why did nothing transfer to him? Fans have offered a few theories. The first is that Titan power transfers to whoever consumes the most spinal fluid. Since Eren drank it all the moment the crystal cracked, he received the full dose. Porco's jaw crushed the shell. It never absorbed anything. The second theory comes down to positioning. Porco was facing downward at the time, making it physically impossible for him to drink or swallow any of the fluid as it spilled out. Even if trace amounts made contact, it simply was not enough to trigger a transfer. And then of course there is the third explanation, plot armor. No further analysis required. What makes it even funnier is that Porco never thought to regenerate his jaw mid-fight and finish the job himself. Instead, he got used as a nutcracker and walked away with nothing to show for it. Did anyone actually guess who the Titans were before the reveals? Looking back at Attack on Titan Season 1, the clues were sitting in plain sight the entire time, and it's almost painful to revisit. Rainer being the armored Titan is the most embarrassing one in hindsight. Same hair, same build, same face shape. The cast wasn't exactly overflowing with blonde, muscular characters, yet everyone collectively decided Rainer was just a reliable, normal guy and never questioned it further. The Colossal Titan is slightly more forgivable. Bertolt was quiet and spent most of his screen time in the background. But he was 6'4" at 16 years old, and Isayama has confirmed that Bertolt's face was literally used as the design reference for the Colossal Titan. That detail alone should have been enough. Annie is the one some viewers actually caught before the reveal. Her fighting style, her cold and detached attitude, the way she consistently avoided forming genuine bonds with anyone around her. Every piece was there waiting to be connected. Most people were just too caught up screaming alongside Eren to slow down and look at what the show was quietly laying out. Attack on Titan never really hid the truth. It simply trusted the audience to be too distracted to notice it. Why did the armored Titan climb the wall instead of using the hole? In Season 3, during the Battle of Shiganshina, there's a perfectly good opening right there, so why flex and scale the entire thing? As it turns out, Rainer isn't just operating on muscle. There's genuine strategic thinking behind the decision. By climbing the wall rather than entering through the breach, Rainer gains an elevated vantage point that lets him assess the entire battlefield from above. From the top of the wall, he can see enemy positions, check for ambushes, and evaluate the situation before committing to a move. Charging through the hole and into the district blind would have been the reckless choice, not the smart one. There's also the communication angle. Zeke was operating from outside the walls during this battle, and visual contact between the two of them was essential for coordinating their plan. Climbing to the top of the wall gave Rainer a way to signal that he was in position and ready to move forward. And of course, if Rainer had simply walked through the hole, we wouldn't have gotten that iconic sequence of Erwin standing on the wall looking down at the armored Titan with that unforgettable energy. So the wall climb was doing a lot of heavy lifting on multiple levels.
Here are 4 hidden details you probably missed in Attack on Titan. First, the baby shown during the rumbling, the one everyone tries to save, is actually voiced by the real-life baby of Eren Yeager's voice actor. Looks like he's already raising the next generation of voice actors. Second, when Gabby shoots Eren's head off right before he reaches Zeke, it completely changes the appearance of his founding Titan form. The massive skeleton we see is actually just his neck stretched out. After Armin transforms and destroys that form, Eren's next appearance shows what his full founding Titan would have looked like if Gabby hadn't interfered. Third, in the very first episode, when the Colossal Titan grabs the wall, it leaves a mark. And 3 seasons later, in the Return to Shiganshina arc, that same damage is still there. This proves the animators paid serious attention to continuity and detail. Lastly, the raid on Liberio in Season 4 was actually foreshadowed earlier. In the end credits of episode 59, there's a quick shot of a body lying on the docks, one of the casualties of Armin's transformation. Subtle touches like these make the series incredibly layered.
Why did Armin's transformation resemble a nuclear bomb while Bertolt's transformation in Season 1 was nearly silent? Is this a plot hole or just skill difference? The answer comes down to control and intent. Marley's records describe Bertolt as a prodigy who mastered the Colossal Titan almost immediately. Because of that, he could precisely regulate how much energy his transformation released. This allowed him to choose between a minimal, controlled transformation or a massive explosive one depending on the situation. During the initial attack, his goal was simply to breach the wall and disappear. So he kept the transformation relatively contained, using steam as cover rather than causing unnecessary destruction. Armin, on the other hand, lacked that level of refinement at first. When he transformed, he released the Colossal Titan's power at full output, which resulted in an explosion resembling a nuclear blast. This wasn't just about inexperience, but also about necessity. He needed maximum destructive force for the situation he was in. So it's not a plot hole. The Colossal Titan has always had variable output. The difference between the two comes down to mastery, control, and the specific intent behind each transformation. Did Armin fall in love with Annie because of Bertolt's memories? Early on in Attack on Titan, Armin never showed clear romantic interest in Annie in the same way he did later. However, everything began to shift after Armin inherited the Colossal Titan from Bertolt. As a Titan shifter, Armin also inherited fragments of Bertolt's memories, along with the emotions tied to them. Bertolt was undeniably in love with Annie, and it's possible those feelings were passed down through those memories. This could explain Armin's sudden closeness to Annie, especially his decision to visit her every single day during the 4 years she remained crystallized. That level of devotion felt abrupt compared to his earlier behavior. On the other hand, many fans believe Armin always cared for Annie on some level, even if he never consciously acknowledged it. From this perspective, Bertolt's memories didn't create new feelings but instead amplified emotions that already existed deep within him. Ultimately, the story leaves this question intentionally ambiguous, allowing viewers to decide whether Armin's love was inherited, awakened, or a mixture of both. Did you notice this insane foreshadowing in Attack on Titan in Season 3? Right after the intense battle with the colossal Titan, the main cast faces a critical choice: who to save, Armin or Commander Erwin? In that moment, Eren tells Mikasa that the one who will save humanity isn't himself or Erwin, it will be Armin. At first, it felt like a cryptic, almost offhand remark, and fans had no way of anticipating its weight. But as the story unfolds, the true brilliance of that line becomes clear. Armin grows from the timid strategist into a leader capable of carrying the moral and tactical burden of humanity's survival. When Eren launches the catastrophic rumbling, it is Armin who steps up, organizing the coalition that ultimately confronts and stops him. This foreshadowing is a masterclass in narrative layering, subtly hinting at future leadership, moral courage, and the bittersweet cost of heroism, showing that sometimes the quietest voice can become the decisive force that shapes the fate of the world. Why didn't the Marley warriors just eat Eren right here, in Trost District, when Eren comes out of the Sand of Titans, starts wrecking other Titans, and eventually collapses? After his body gives out, their hesitation makes more sense when you look at their actual objective. Reiner, Annie, and Bertolt quickly realized he was a shifter, but their mission was never about collecting any Titan power they found. Their true goal was to locate and secure the founding Titan, which they believed was within the royal family. At that moment, Eren appeared to be nothing more than an unknown soldier with no ties to the Fritz Rice bloodline, making him irrelevant to their priority. Acting immediately would have forced them to transform in front of everyone, exposing their identities while only gaining the Attack Titan, which wasn't their target. On top of that, they didn't fully understand what either the Attack or Founding Titan looked like, leaving them uncertain about what they were seeing. Waiting allowed them to gather more information without risking their cover. It wasn't until much later, when Eren made contact with the Smiling Titan and demonstrated the ability to influence other Titans, that they realized he possessed the Founder. Only then did he become their true objective, shifting their focus from observation to pursuit.